everyone. Welcome to the Cynthia Linox Show. I am your host, Cynthia Linox. Here again to remind you that this is the best season of your life. Now, you know that we are going through this journey of self-discovery. And I am delighted to hear a little bit about your journey and to share my experiences and some of the things that I am sharing from all people that are going through this journey and the experiences they're having, and hopefully it's helpful to all of us because we can learn from each other. Now, this journey of self-discovery also involve the whole concept of identity architecture, because that's what you're rebuilding as you discover the real you, the person that you really are, your authentic self. You're going to realize that a lot of the things that you subscribe to, a lot of the things that you entertain, a lot of the things that the thoughts and traditional thoughts and habits and patterns that you subscribe to are really not yours. They're not from you. They are inherited beliefs, inherited patterns, inherited traditional norms and conventional structures and things of that nature. And some of these do not serve you anymore today. And if they don't, then it behooves us to get rid of them. Why? Because you're making room for the new. You're making room for new things, and you're really going through a feng shui, just cleaning out spaces so that you can bring to the forefront who you really are. This way you can live organically, without pretending, without a performance, without trying to please the collective or follow the collective or people please, because that's what happens when we don't know who we are. We just do things as everyone else does. Well, this is the way we always do it. We've always done it. This is the way we do it. And you really don't have any substantial reasoning for a lot of things that you are engaged in. Now, one of the things that is important for you to decide when you are embarking on this journey. By now, many of you are already on this journey of self-discovery. But one of the things that you have to decide for yourself, because remember, this journey is not something that you are doing with someone else. This is a journey of self-discovery. So now you can share your experiences with others, but it's not like when you're going walking and you meet a buddy and say, let's go walk, and you go walking together. That's not how a journey of self-discovery. A journey of self-discovery is so personal because it has to do with your life, with your experiences, with your surrounding, your environment, your culture, the things that you have gone through, your family structure, your society, and all of that, the training that you have had, the patterns that's been introduced to you, and the habits that you have adhered to throughout the years. So it's not something that you share with someone else. You may have similarities, but the journey is strictly yours. One of the things that you're going to have to decide at some point is, what type of life do you want to live? You're going to have to decide that. Do you want to live a life in survival mode? Or do you want to live a life where you are thriving, where you are flourishing, where you are happy and in your space, your place of contentment, your space of peace? Are you going to go for that, or strive for that, or are you going to settle with the survival mode? Because survival mode is something that is infringed upon us by default. Survival mode, sometimes we don't even realize that. And all of that has to do with the condition of your nervous system. How on alert are you? How protective are you of yourself? How emotionally safe are you? And based on that, you're going to decide what you want to do. Do I want to, I want to break out of this mode, or do I want to, or am I going to stay there? Now, I'm finding it rather interesting once you make the decision. But first, you have to know that it is something that you want. You have to make a decision. Is this what I want? Is this what I desire? Can I make this happen? Can I make this happen? And do I deserve this? You have to want it. You have to know that you can make it happen. And you have to know that you deserve it. Nobody's going to tell you that you deserve a good life. I had the privilege when I was much, much younger. My dad took me out and he said, you deserve a good life. You deserve to have the best. We were in the store looking at a dress. It was very expensive. I looked at it, looked at the price, and he came over and he said, if that's what you want, you get it. You deserve to have a good life. You deserve to have the best. And I've kept that with me forever. Forever. I have never, even in my moments of personal challenge, financial challenge, and just different type of situation, job loss and all that, I always think that I deserve the best. I deserve the best. So you have to make a decision. Do you want to thrive? Do you want to start thriving? Because, and please don't associate thriving with resources like, you have to have money. No, it starts in your mind. It starts with your attitude. It starts with a decision that you make. I'm going to live a life where I'm thriving. And it doesn't matter what situation you are. Once you decide that, and once you start thriving in your mind, then you will see that things will manifest to match up with those thoughts that you have settled in your subconscious mind. So, do you know that you deserve it? Do you know that you can have it? Decide on it. Know that you can have it. But then again, know that you deserve it. Because if you don't think you deserve it, then it doesn't matter how much you affirm, these affirmations. See, affirmations are okay, but that affirmations are just words. What you're looking to do is to record your messaging and your feeling into your subconscious mind, because that's what moves that engine, your subconscious. And then, it's manifested through your nervous system. How relaxed, how calm are you? Your nervous system is your command center. That's the command center. And you can, I'm always checking. I'm always tapping into my nervous system. When I feel a little unrest, I always try to find out why. I always try to do inventory and see, well, what was said, what was done, what was perceived, and I go through that to make sure that my nervous system remains regulated and not dysregulated. There's some things that accompany, how do you know your nervous system is regulated? Your nervous system is regulated. When you're calm, when you're curious, when you are compassionate, when you are creative, you have emotional safety, you are emotionally available and kind. Kind is not something you have to pretend or perform. It comes naturally, because you're relaxed. You are at peace. And don't get it twisted. Sometimes people think that peace means quiet or silence. No, peace is something more internal. It's how is your nervous system operating? Is it agitated? Is it anxious? Then it doesn't matter how quiet you are, there's no peace. Peace is a regulated nervous system where you can think, where you can respond to situations, where you can give yourself, even emotionally, intimately. You are in a place where you can where you can surrender to situations. Why? Because your nervous system, the peace that you have that's manifesting throughout your life, it's because your nervous system is regulated. Now, if you have a nervous system that is, always on alert, fight or flight, protective, doesn't feel emotional safety, doesn't you're in a protective mode all the time, you are like on guard, all of that means a dysregulated nervous system. You're withdrawn, defensive, anxious, people pleasing. If you have a tendency to be a people pleaser, then your nervous system is not regulated. Why? Because you are tending to please others so that you can be liked. But once you know who you are, and once you know and love yourself, it doesn't really matter who likes you or who doesn't. It's just like me. The other day I was talking to someone about this whole show. And, when you are in the public's eyes, you're not sent for everyone. Not everyone is going to like you. And you have to be okay with that. I have to be okay with that. This show is not for everyone, but that's okay. If it's not for you, then you just scroll. If it's for you, then you can learn something from it. In my mind, I'm always thinking there are 8 billion people on Earth. And even if it's 1%, less than 1%, it's just, so once you reckon with that, then you can move forward and not be concerned about who likes you, who favors you, who learns from you, who gleans from you. You don't have to worry about any of that. That's why when you're doing something that you like, something that you love, something that you are supposed to do, something that you really, comes natural from you and you're good at it and so forth, it's not work, and you're not shy, you're confident. And most of my time I spent researching and studying and learning and learning more so that I can help myself. And in helping myself, I share with you as well. And for those of you that drop me a note about how it's going with you, I do appreciate that. Now, what I have been hearing a lot lately is having to do with relationships, with people, women in particular, that are having a challenge in a relationship and going through this journey, and that it's become a challenge. And yes, it can become a challenge, especially for people that have been married for a long time. And what I have to say to that is, first, you have to determine what is the foundation of your marriage. In my marriage in particular, the foundation of my marriage is not love, is not, it's not love, consideration, none of that. The foundation of my marriage, and I'm just sharing this with you, this is not, the foundation of my relationship is respect. Out of the gate, that's what we started with, respect. When I got married years ago, we did not say the traditional marriage vows. That just didn't work for us. For better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health. That just did not work for us. Because when you're starting a partnership, that is exactly what you want. And even back then, I did not have, or we did not have the language to apply to the sentiments, the thoughts, and the concept of partnership. What we did know, at least what I know, and I'm going to talk to you from my standpoint, is that, partnership is a relationship where there's reciprocity. You can't be in a relationship where you become the emotional manager of the relationship. if you're in a relationship where you are the emotional operational manager, at some point you're going to get exhausted. You're managing the schedules, you're managing the calendar, you're managing the kids, you're managing uh, vacations, you're managing outings, you're managing everything, you're managing your husband, appointments, you're managing everything. And so you say, well, where's my partner? Where is my partner? When you have a partner, and that's why I don't like, well, it doesn't work for me. When people say, uh, wife duties or husband duties or uh, gender assignment, chores, and things of that nature. I don't, we don't flow that way. Why? Because if you're good at something, then you will excel doing that. If I'm good at something, then I will excel doing that. When it comes to technology and IT issues and so forth, that's my I'm good at that. That's my strength. And my husband takes advantage. Anytime he has a little hiccup in his situation, with his phone, he would say, well, let me check with my IT person. And he checks with me. And invariably I always get stuff resolved, because whenever there's a problem, in my mind, there's a solution, and I can find it. When it comes to other chores, again, we are a partner, and that's the mindset that you have to have. Now, if you are, and of course, if you are, a couple that's been married for a long time, and it all depends on what generation you fall in, you may be approaching it with a traditional mindset. And that can be hard to change, because things have changed today. And if you're talking in terms of thriving in your relationship, you no longer want to be the operational manager of the emotional aspect of your relationship. You want a partner. You want reciprocity. You want to be able to sit and talk as partners, not as head and subordinate. And I know there's a mindset out there, especially the religious mind, because I was in that circle for a while. Not in my marriage, where we are thinking, the husband is the head of the household, and then God, husband, wife submit, and all that. All of that does not work for us. That doesn't work for me. I don't believe in this submit. We both submit to each other. And as a result, because of the way we think, our relationship is blessed because of that. I do not subscribe to that mindset. Now, if you subscribe to that mindset, then that's a little different. You can't have a partnership. Why? Because you're going to think that, when we have a situation that we have to make a decision, we make a decision as partners. Why? Because I may have a different take, or my husband may have a different take on the situation. I have a brain, and I can think critically, and I trust my ideas. I have strong opinions. I have good views, good perception, and so forth. And so does he. And if we reach at an impasse, if we reach to where we cannot agree, then of course there's always concession that you make. There's always, tweaking, modifying, and making a decision that suits the union, the unit, the union. But partnership, that's why I always talk in terms of partnership. Partnership does not need to have an operational manager for the emotional aspect of your relationship. No, why? Because both are contributing, and there is reciprocity. You have needs, and your partner has needs. And if you don't stay curious, one of the things that I always say, when you come home, I always talk about intentionality, to be intentional. And some people say, well, what's being intentional? Being intentional is being present. When you come home, if you've been out, check the temperature of the environment. Check your spouse and identify the temperature. If you feel there's a bit of heaviness or concern or feel whatever it is, then, be curious. How was your day, sweetheart? What's on your mind? What are you thinking about? What's on your mind? Anything exciting happened today? Be curious whether you were out, you came back, or the person that's at home. If you notice the temperature changed a little bit, be curious about your relationship. Be curious about your partner. That's how you keep going, because why? You would know what the situation is. And if there's a conversation that needs to be had, you must have the conversation. If you don't have the conversation, it will keep regurgitating and keep coming up and not just having the conversation, but come to some kind of solution. Understanding why did this happen, or why do you feel this way, or what did I say or do to offend you, whatever it is. Partnership, that's how business become successful, because when there is partnership and you both can come into agreement about the outcome, then there will be success. But if one person is carrying a load and the other person avoids it, if your partner is avoiding that load or avoiding the deep conversations, that's the thing that I find fascinating. Most people avoid the deep conversations. And a lot of that is connected to your nervous system, so that you can be emotionally available to your partner. You have to clear that up. You have to get your nervous system back in gear so that you can respond, so that you can surrender, so that you can let your guard down, so that you can get rid of all anxiety and all protectiveness. Because let me tell you, your nervous system does not ask for permission to function. Your nervous system is regulated or guided. It's the capacity. It's your brain, your feelings, your thoughts. Your nervous system is governed by that, and it commands your body to respond to those things. So if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling neglected, if you're feeling rejected or abandoned or not chosen, your body will respond to that. And when it comes to any kind of connection with your partner, whether it's intimacy or just affection or whatever, you will not connect. Your nervous system will tell you, no, something is not right. Something is not resolved. Something is not clear. We need clarity on that. Something is stuck. Something is in survival mode, and I need out. I need clarity. I need to know that my partner has clarity, has a clear understanding of this side of the operation and what's going on here. That's why you have intentionality is something, your presence, you have to be present. And it doesn't take, to be present is not to be physically present. Again, you come in, you read the room, you read the temperature, you scan quick, and why? Because what's this? You want your partner to be happy. You want to do the things that's pleasing for the organization, for the unit, for the union. You want, if you want to thrive, you want both of you to thrive. You want the best for each other. You want both of you to thrive together. You want the relationship to flourish. You want the experiences to be just as pleasurable for both of you. So being present is also being curious. What do you think about this? Is this, isn't this fun? And then, then they will share with you their thoughts on it. When I say being curious, it's not just asking questions. With that comes truth, honesty, and reality. If you edit yourself, your delivery, whatever you have to share, if you edit it, modify it, change it, and justify things when you are communicating something about the organization, the partnership, the union, the unit, you and your partner. If you have to edit yourself, you're not getting truth from that. Because what's the reason to edit your delivery, whatever it is? To edit is to protect someone else's ego. Otherwise, if you can be honest without someone becoming defensive, if you can be open and honest with your partner and share truth and honesty, keep it real. Keep it real. Don't try to sugarcoat anything. Remember, you are not in your relationship 50-50. You're in your relationship 100% and 100%. You come with everything. Your mind, your heart, your thinking, your soul. You bring everything into the relationship. So it's 100 and 100. So there's no room to edit. You cannot, well, I'm going to say it this way, or I'm going to say it that way. And, because obviously you're not, some person shared something about, well, if I say this, he'll yell. And, certain things certain behaviors I am not familiar with, because in my mind, I don't get that. Mind you that I've seen that growing up. Sometimes my dad would yell, and I mentioned in one of my shows where my dad taught me what not to accept in a relationship. When I was a little girl, I thought I'll never have anyone yell at me. He's like, I wouldn't have anyone yell at me. I wouldn't have anyone raise their hands at me. I wouldn't have anyone try to punish me or threaten me, or those things. That is not, and that is part of my standard. And even now, if you haven't established that, you can start establishing a new standard for who you are. As you discover the person that you want to be, as you start engineering and building and creating your true identity, you can also establish not only a new set of standards, things that you will no longer accept. And there could be a challenge there, because your partner, and when I say partner, I'm talking because someone, quite a few people have shared about the challenges that they're going through in the relationship, and how it affects how it's affecting their marriage. But when I say partner, it could be a family member, it could be a family relationship, siblings, it could be anything. But once you come to an understanding of who you are, you can set up standards, new standards. And yes, there may be a challenge. You may lose something, because somebody may say, well, oh, you want to be this way? I'm not going to put up with that. Well, so that's the reason you must know your worth, and you must determine what works for you. And I always repeat, this show, I don't tell you what to think. I don't tell you what to do. I only bring awareness so that you will know that you are able to reconstruct and design the life that you want for yourself as you go through your journey of self discovery and rebuilding an identity that is yours and not an inherited identity from your childhood. Because if you haven't built a new identity, then yeah, you are going through an identity that was imposed upon you by society, by teachers, your parents, religious doctrines, social structure. All of that shape your identity. And if you're not functioning in the totality of who you really are, then that's why we become people pleasing, and we fear, we don't want to offend people, and we say yes when we mean no, and all of that. It affects your confidence, it affects your assertiveness, it affects your total being. Why? Because you're living performatively instead of authentically. Authenticity is not something that we just happen into. You have to be so present. You have to be so mindful of who you are, mindful of your worth. Some of you share that you struggle because in your mind, you think you are, one person said, they struggle in their mind because, right out the gate, they're told that, they're a sinner and they're good for nothing. That anything they do right is not, it's like a filthy rag or something of that nature. So for them to think highly of themselves, it's a struggle. And dealing with their humanity, that's a whole different topic. Many of you share that you even have a problem, a big problem of shame and guilt and judgment when you deal with your own humanity. When it comes to sexual, sexual feelings and intimacy and all that, you're dealing with things like inhibition and self-consciousness and all of that. But once you know who you are, once you know what you bring to life, then you can be who you are. No guilt, no shame, no judgment. Some of you struggle with this thing about somebody said, they're dating someone and they have mutual attraction, but they don't know where the relationship is going, and they have issues with what they call premarital sex. And again, that is a social construct. And I always say to people, go with your intuition. You must honor your humanity as much as you honor your consciousness. Honor your humanity. But you have to know how to do that by accepting the fullness of who you are, your worth, your value, and know that, when you do certain things, if you engage in a sexual relationship, you have to understand that it's not dirty, it's not bad. As long as, obviously, if there's mutual consent, you have to clear your mind of all these social or religious constructs. You have to understand, and these are people that are deconstructing from their religious thread. And I understand that clearly because, that was part of my experience years back when I was a religious person, because I met my husband when I was religious. But then came a time when I started making decisions for myself. And, it's so beautiful because you really, once you get to know thyself, once you get to know who you are and love who you are, then things become clear in your mind. And one of the things that is so challenging to get, once you've been indoctrinated in certain things, you have to know that, there's no judgment, there's no shame. and you have to really reconstruct that programming. You have to change it. You have to change the database, because what goes into your subconscious, and for me, it was getting it into that thought process, getting it into my subconscious mind to know that I am okay. No guilt, no shame, no judgment in the choices that I made. So you're going to have to make choices again, but you want to make sure, because if you walk around with guilt, then you'll be anxious. Guilt, shame, you'll be depressed. You'll be depressed. So you have to determine what's going to work for you. What is going to work for you? I'm telling you, as I shared before, your nervous system is the command center of your life, and it's geared, it's programmed, it's triggered by your brains, your thoughts, and your body manifests the reaction. And to get you in an emotionally safe place, you have to have understanding, my friend. You have to have understanding. Otherwise, you'll get into damage control, because you will start thinking that you're a sinner, that you're no good, and all of that. And then you have to get into damage control. And this person shared that she said, I failed, but then I asked for forgiveness, and I failed, and I just keep falling and asking for forgiveness, and so forth. This person does not understand their humanity. Neither are you honoring your humanity. You have to honor your humanity. Just imagine. Just pause for a second and give it some thought. If you don't honor your humanity, then anything that you do with your thoughts, your feelings, and the things you do, you will always live in guilt, shame, criticism. That's why they call it negative criticism for themselves. They criticize themselves and they talk bad about themselves. And they judge themselves. There's no peace. Because remember, quietness is not peace. Peace is a regulated nervous system. So you can't let anything slide, You have to address everything, because even though you may say, I am okay, or I'm fine, like, how you doing? I'm fine. Your body keeps receipts. Your mouth may say, I am fine, but your body keeps the receipt of the emotions. If somebody said something that offended you, regardless of who it is, and if the relationship is important enough, the relationship is close enough, whether it's a relationship with your partner or your kids or your parents, your siblings, your relative, whatever, whomever, even at work. I remember one time at work, I was in a leadership position, manager of, and we had a meeting, all the managers with, a senior manager, and everybody contributed to the meeting. And I said, I shared some things. And the manager that was facilitating the meeting did not think it was a good idea. I'm okay with that, for that project. The way it was expressed or the way it was knocked down, it was it was pretty um, humiliating for me. Perhaps others didn't get it, but the way it was dismissed, it was so, because if you say, no, I don't think that's going to work with this project, I can understand that. But the way the delivery was, it was, I wouldn't even say humiliating, it was just dismissive. I'm telling you, in all my years of corporate America, that was the first time, and this was like a new manager, and and I thought, wow. So the next day, I sent an email, and I said, whenever you have a moment, I would like to chat with you. I just could not let go of it because if I did not address it, I would be resentful, and it would have probably affected my performance, and I would have carried that around and whatever. And they said yes. I said I'm even willing to kind of stay after certain time. I wanted to make sure that there was no rush, there was no hurry, there was no deadline, there was no someone, oh, I have a meeting following this. I wanted to make sure that we had all the time we needed to unwrap this, like at the end of business day. So I stayed. And I went into this person's office, and we were fine. And they had no idea what it had to do with. And I said, that meeting yesterday was very productive, and I'm glad that we, came up with something that's going to work for all, and it's going to be, innovative and so forth. And I said, when I offered my suggestion, I said I was thinking in these terms and blah blah blah, and I just kind of explained what I meant. I said, but the reaction that I got from the leader, yourself, that hit hard. And I said, because it may not have been a good idea for this project, but you asked for ideas and everyone shared something. Well, they were aghast. They had no idea that their response was so dismissive, so almost derogatory. So they had no idea. They had no idea, because this is someone that respected me and liked me, and we worked well together. I don't know what happened in that meeting, but the point is, that is something, that is a real story. That is something that did happen. And they mentioned that, they were shocked when I came in there, and when I came up with this, they had no idea what I was going to talk about, because I didn't give them a heads up. I didn't want that. I didn't want that. But I genuinely believe that they really did not mean to be offensive. They did not mean to offend me with that behavior. They were under pressure, but at the same time, I had to resolve it, because it affected my nervous system. As a matter of fact, I wanted to go and settle it that same day, but I was a little too triggered and too angry, that I thought, no, let me give it a day. And, from one day to the next, that's all I thought about. And I knew if I did not address that, it would have affected my performance. And I wasn't about to let that happen. So I addressed it. I addressed it with the manager, and once they understood what I meant and how it affected me, they knew that's just not the way, to speak to anyone, not just me, but I was just talking for myself. And it never happened again. And I just shelved it. Remember, I don't forgive. I address the situation, and I just but I didn't have to take it off the shelf again. Why? Because it was resolved. They understood the standards that I have, and that I am not someone that you can talk to any kind of way. That's not even like a big deal. That's just because that's so inbred in me. That is so innate. That is so me. In a lot of situations, in a lot of my relationships, I will go to you and I will say, you know what? That didn't set well. I do that. If I value the relationship, of course, this was in corporate America. So it's not like we were best friends or anything, but we had a relationship. We had business relationship, which was important for me because uh I had a great job, and I didn't want to jeopardize my job, my performance. I didn't want to jeopardize any of that. So I addressed that situation, and it turned out to be effective. And that's what you have to do with every situation. Otherwise, your nervous system is going to be dysregulated when it comes to different situations. And again, it's just now that I am learning how this all works, and I am putting language to it. But before, I didn't think about nervous system. I just knew that I was pissed. I just knew that I was not happy for someone to talk to me that way, or to treat me that way, or to address me that way. And I just knew that I had to resolve it. And I was confident enough that this wouldn't, jeopardize my position. And if it did, then oh well. But I had to address it. And the same thing happens in your relationship. You cannot be the operational manager of the state of the emotional aspect of your relationship. There has to be reciprocity. There has to be reciprocity. You are present, you're curious, you're mindful about your partner, and they are present and they are curious, always asking, how is it going? What are you thinking? What's on your mind? Or it doesn't even have to be that way. It doesn't have to be canned or programmed. No, it's like, today this and this happened. What do you think about this? Always stay engaged. Always stay engaged. It's funny. Over the weekend, my husband and I, we went out. We went out to a steakhouse, and I'm doing a lot of things with research. I'm just involved in a lot of things mentally and so forth. So we went out to dinner, and I was quiet. I was kind of low key, subdued, low key, and we had a drink. Well, they brought the drink. We do a signature toast, cheers to life. We always do that. And, they brought the food. We ate. And at one point he said, how comes you're so quiet? Why are you so quiet? Now, we were in a restaurant, and the thing that I would have discussed with him, that wasn't the place, because when I'm going to have a conversation or talk with someone, you need to check your ambiance so that you can have an effective conversation, whatever it is you're going to share or whatever, feedback. And if you're eating, that just wasn't the place for that. So most of the evening was like quiet. And that is so different for us, because whenever we go out, we always have something to talk about, about our lives, about current affairs. We always find something to talk about. So there's always an exchange. And that's why he said, you're quiet, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. And that's all I said. And then I realized, after I realized, I thought, way back then, I could have thought, or he could have thought, well, I wonder what's wrong, or is everything all right, or whatever, or is there a problem? No. But then I realized that when you are thinking in terms of when you're thinking in terms of being organic and authentic and living your best life and all that, a moment of silence, if you will, just a quiet moment. Nothing, it doesn't have to be always extraordinary. This was like an ordinary moment. And then I had to come to understand, or to even conclude that, hey, we're good. I got my meal. I liked it, like what I ordered. And he was like, oh, this is so good. And, we exchanged that. But for the most part, as far as, the conversations we always engage in, that just didn't happen. And that was okay. I had to become okay with that. And he was okay with that. And we just, we finish, and then, of course, she comes back and offered dessert, and we, got a little bit of dessert, and that was it. And it was good. You have to know who you are, my friend. You have to know who you are. You have to know your standards, your values, your non-negotiables. You have to know all of that when you are managing because, if you get to a point where you repress or suppress your feelings, or in any situation, in a relationship, in a partnership, in anything, then it puts you in a space of, remember, your whole goal is to thrive. And it would really subtract from that goal if you don't address situations and bring clarity to whatever it is that you need resolved in your life. This is a one person's journey. It involves a lot of other people, but what I am finding interesting is that I am discovering so much about me. I'm discovering so much about myself. And as that happens, I am seeing that I'm setting new standards, which is okay. New standards, because today's a new day. I remember when I think I shared before, I said to my husband, what made you choose me as a wife? Because he waited. And he said, because you are a woman with standards. And I didn't think in those terms. Again, I didn't put language to all that. He said, because he had standards. And I thought, wow. And then you start thinking like what were they? Well, obviously, again, they were innate, things that I tolerated, things that I wouldn't accept. And that's just the way it is with me. And now I have come to realize is that you continually, as life presents itself to you, you continually set standards for yourself in every relationship. If he doesn't call you, are you going to call back and texting? No. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but you set the standards for yourself. That's why in most cases you have to teach people how to address you, how to love you, how to deal with you, how to connect with you. Because people are people, and they'll just dish out whatever. And then if you don't know what your standards are, you're going to have the tendency to accept whatever. Again, to keep the relationship flowing, you become the emotional manager of your relationship, or you become a people pleaser at the expense of your own peace, at the expense of your own calmness and tranquility, and you being relaxed and at peace at your expense. Well, my friend, you will not thrive if you allow yourself to honor someone else's feelings, their ego, and to mitigate people's attitude and all that. You can't thrive. You can't flourish. Why? Because you're honoring someone else's emotions. You're protecting their ego. And at the same time, at your expense. That is self-betrayal. And it's not fear to yourself. It's self-abandonment, self-betrayal. Whenever you yield to someone, I don't care if it's your kids or whatever, you determine who they are and what the relationship is. If you yield to them at the expense of your conviction, of your self-worth, that becomes self-betrayal. You have abandoned yourself, your worth, your ideas, your value to please someone else. Why? Because you want to keep the peace. Keeping the peace is not an honorable gesture. It's not an honorable thing. It's not like, oh, they're a peaceful person. No, you are betraying yourself. You don't have to keep the peace. Of course, you don't have to create drama as either, but you make sure that it is clearly communicated to the people that are around you what you stand for. You set your standards, and you also set boundaries for yourself. It's like, no, I'm not going to allow myself to be submitted to that kind of relationship or to that kind of environment, that circle. I'm not going to submit myself to that. You protect yourself. Is it selfishness? No, it is you becoming aware of your value, your worth, and the significance of creating an identity that is yours. You are the architect of your identity. You are the architect of your identity. You build it, you create it. You're the one that set up the beams and know how deep they go, so that when something comes and challenge you or kind of try to rock your boat, that you can say, no, I'm not, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna deal with that. And then it's deep enough where you understand that, whatever consequences or whatever happens from that, that's just life. It all depends on, again, whatever you decide that works for you. I'm not here to tell you what to think or what to do. I am here to bring awareness to you that you are a magnificent creative being, and you have the ability to be, well, you are the architect of your identity. We meet here every Thursday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if you can't join me for some reason or another, look at the icons down here. And that is Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can pick up the feed on those platforms 24/7. If you need to drop me a note, the email is right here, info@thecynthialinoxshow.com. Share whatever you have to share with me, and I will either share from that, or if there's something in particular you want me to address, I will do that as well. Why? Because it helps us all. It helps us, and of course, when you share it, it's private and it's confidential, and it's your situation. It's not something that we're going to reveal publicly, but the experience is something that can help all of us. So when I share, it's about the experience, it's not about the person. So anyway, we have a long weekend coming up, and a holiday weekend coming up, and whatever plans you have, just be safe. It's always great to have extended days for those of you that work. So most of you are, let me see, today's Thursday, tomorrow is Friday. Most of you are off tomorrow, actually, because the holiday falls on a Saturday. So in most cases, you'll be off on a Friday. But anyway, this is it, my friend. We will see you next week, same time, same place. In the meantime, I will say ciao, tata, au revoir, and again, same time, same place, 2 p.m.